Wow, it's 2017 already, huh? In a couple weeks, I'll have been doing this for over a year. We've made some wonderful memories, haven't we? Fuck. Well, since I'm feeling nostalgic, and since there's an updated re-release coming out in a couple months, let's take a look back at one of the first Otome games I ever played, Hakuoki. Oh, and we've got a green screen now, so check this out. Awesome, right? So it's the mid-1860s, about 10 years after Matthew Perry showed up to Japan, pointed cannons at the harbour and said, "Hey, guess what? Japan isn't isolated anymore." Society is split into two major political viewpoints. Those who support the current shogunate government and think accepting trade with the West is the only way Japan will survive, and those who support reinstating the emperor and flinging all the filthy gaijin right into the ocean. On the shogunate side are the Shinsengumi, a ragtag civilian police force who go all over Edo beating the ever-loving shit out of anyone who tries to start trouble. Or not start trouble. Or anyone, really. The real-life history of the Shinsengumi is a complicated and politically dense subject, and a lot of historical accounts outright contradict others. Even today, people are divided on whether these guys were heroes or assholes. So Hakuoki is a semi-historical otoge based loosely on the lives of real people who lived, fought, and died. Mostly the latter two. So in order to make this whole idea more Otome-rific, Idea Factory first made all the Shinsengumi really hot Bishonen idols, and replaced all the boring political and military drama with psychotic albino vampires and demon ninjas. Wait, what? Yeah. You play as Chizuru Yukimura, a totally ordinary and in no way supernaturally gifted generic otome protagonist. Your father has, of course, vanished mysteriously, and being the wafy daddy's girl you are, you go to the imperial capital of Kyoto to track him down, and then immediately get mugged, attacked, mugged again, threatened, and kidnapped. Go you! Your kidnappers, luckily enough, turn out to be a bunch of hot boys in blue outfits, the Shinsengumi, who, being valiant and honorable servants of peace and order, decide to kill you. Until they find out you're a chick, then they instead hold you hostage and make you cook and clean for them, like some kind of fucked up Beauty and the Beast shit. Then, a few months later, a mysterious trio of superpowered douchebags show up and proclaim you are the chosen one. Because of course, your father's disappearance is related to the plague of crazy maniacs threatening the city, which is in turn linked to a bizarre magical steroid potion, which is linked to an ancient race of demons who are working for the Imperialists, because this game's plot is really fucking hokey. Nevertheless, depending on which Shinsengumi captain you go with, the story can go in a lot of different directions, so let's dive in and meet our shogunate sweeties.
Characters Romance.
Toshizo Hijikata, the most famous member of the Shinsengumi, is a tall, androgynous anime Adonis with silken hair and eyes of deep purple. He's a stern, resolute warrior who I completely avoided on my initial playthrough 2 years ago because I hate generic vanilla default main guys. He's got a solid edge to him though, which you don't see until you're on his route, with a foul mouth and a grumpy attitude like a pissed off yakuza. It contrasts really well with his seemingly perfect appearance, and makes his route a little more fun than it would have been otherwise. So, like, someone threw a handful of chocolate chips into the vanilla. His route is technically the canon route, the one with the most logical villain, and the one in which the game's title is actually explained. Soji Okita, a bitter cynic with a self-destructive streak and a nasty case of the fuckets. Soji's hobbies include spitting icy sarcasm in your direction and occasionally threatening to murder you. Deep down though, he's a staunchly loyal and honorable guy who's just really fucking bad at dealing with his emotions, so he hides them under a gallows sense of humor. Seriously, dude, you might want to go, talk to someone? And maybe stop cussing so fucking much. Although, to be fair, he's got a lot on his chest, by which I mean he's slowly dying of a terminal lung disease. Yay! Hajime Saito, man of few words and master of the one-hit kill Iaido sword style. After discovering that the two guys I wanted to date weren't available routes, of course, I settled on Saito for my first playthrough, since the novelty of having the silent badass character also be a head shorter than most of his comrades seemed kinda charming. Even now, his route's my favorite. I'm just a massive sucker for those stone-faced stoics who'll jump in front of a bullet and quietly play it off as the most logical course of action. On his route, you'll get to experience his definite undercurrent of wit and the occasional flashes of affection that are just too damn cute for words. And the Western outfit they stick him in at the end of the game is just, so hot. Heisuke Todo, the fiery, fun-sized punk of the group. Just look at this little bastard. Peppy, spunky, full of vim, and sporting the 19th century equivalent of a self-styled trailer park mullet. He's just a big old bundle of fun, and even now he's probably my second favorite character. Even during the game's most somber moments, when everyone else is so damn serious and focused on honor, he still remains a clumsy, loudmouth smartass who steals almost every scene. Damn, I love this brat. Heisuke's probably the Greg-esiest character I have ever seen in an Otome game. In fact, let's see who played him in the dub of the anime. Yep, fucking called it. Sanosuke Harada, samurai frat bro and sassy redhead with a 6-foot pole. He's the man-whore character, a drunken flirt with a razor-sharp wit and an assload of bravado, smirking his way through every scene like he's just too cool for school, or too cool for a sword. Sanosuke prides himself on being the team's only spear wielder, who, like everyone else in this game, turns out to be a romantic, honest, down-to-earth guy who'll fight fiercely for what he believes in. He's damn charming, and I'd love to go grab a beer with the guy, although it's really, really weird hearing Yusa Koji play someone who isn't a massive asshole. And finally, Chikage Kazuma, a ruthless, unstoppable sadist who outmatches even the strongest Shinsengumi, and who is dateable after your first playthrough of the game. Naturally, after finishing Saito's route, I went straight for the Psycho Killer, because I am Kid. So imagine how disappointed I was when the bloodthirsty demon who'll stop at nothing to get what he wants from the first 3 chapters of the game turns out to be a cranky teddy bear who's just kind of racist against humans. No taunting the Bishy's weak human abilities, no wave after wave of mindless slaughter, nothing. Look, you all know me, but I might as well say it. If you're going to make a villain route, make it the worst route. I'm talking about a toxic, radioactive garbage dump of a fucking route, filled with angst, murder, drama, torture, all kinds of fucked up shit. I mean, seriously, if I decide to shtup the monster antagonist, it's not because I want a toothless Tsum baby. I want, 50 Shades of Shu, damn it. And side characters, some of whom really, really need their own routes. Fortunately, some of them are getting routes in Hakuoki Kyoto Winds, the PS Vita re-release coming spring 2017. Whatever the fuck that means. So I'm gonna hold off on talking about him until whenever Patreon has grown enough to get the equipment needed to record HDMI console games. Cough, cough, hint, hint, cough, cough, wink.
Gameplay.
Speaking of Patreon, and speaking of being too broke to afford proper equipment, you may have noticed that the footage in this Otome-Nia is from the PSP release of Hakuoki, which is a straight port of the Japanese PS2 game that came out in 2008. The first version of Hakuoki I actually played was the super duper HD PS3 re-release that came with bonus fan disc and Uncanny Valley animations, but since HDMI capture cards are really expensive, When I discuss the gameplay, I'm going to be just talking about the base game of Hakuoki. No bells, no whistles, no skits, no side stories, no weird-ass high school AUs, just 6 hot dudes and a whole lot of reading. Now, there's a couple of problems right off the bat in making a dating game set against the backdrop of a real historical narrative. First, like I mentioned earlier, in real life, almost all these guys died pretty horribly, and dead boyfriends don't really make fun dates. Second is that this is a Japanese game for a Japanese audience, filled with characters, locations, and events integral to Japanese history. So unless you're either a major in Asian history or a major league weeaboo, you're probably not going to know what any of these guys are talking about half the time. It reminds me of when I first moved to the US and I'd be taking my first American history class, and the teacher is all like, "Y'all know what the intolerable acts are, right? Great, let's move on." And I was just like, "What? Wait, no, give me a minute to Google this shit." Fortunately, Hakuoki includes its own version of Google. You'll notice, highlighted in red, any personal place that's mentioned for the first time. Tab on over to the encyclopedia menu and you'll find an alphabetical glossary of everything mentioned so far, complete with 2-sentence blurbs on, like, what a daimyo is, or who the Aizu clan were, or where in the world was the Ezo Republic. After scrolling through the endless question box and absorbing all this information, you'll probably still be pretty fucking lost, but at least it provides some context to the proceedings. Right next to the encyclopedia is the status menu, which may look pretty familiar to some of you guys. Each character has 2 bars, romance and corruption. Romance shows you how many affection points you've gotten for a particular guy, although it's pretty easy to know if you're on the right path, because when you do make a right dialogue choice, you'll see an explosion of sakura petals pop up over the guy's heart, which also might look pretty familiar. And corruption is, well, I'm not even going to call this a spoiler, because it's literally on the game's front cover, but in some routes, your dude will decide to become an albino vampire in order to gain the strength to protect you, and in order to up the game's angst quotient. 2 or 3 times during the story, your Animu Edward Cullen will double over with pain and start getting the shakes, at which point you decide to either let him numb on your arteries or just suck it up like a real man would. Pro tip: aside from being kinda hot, it's almost always a better idea to let them give you a Transylvanian hickey, because if you tell him to get good too many times, he'll die from blood withdrawal and you'll get a bad ending. Structure-wise, the game's split into 7 to 8 chapters, with the first 3 chapters being the common route, which branches off after chapter 3 depending on which guy you've got the most points with. Also, kind of familiar to folks who've played this other game I keep talking about, which was made by the exact same company. After the branch, the plot goes off in wildly different directions, depending on the route you're on. The stories are all different enough to be distinct from each other, but can get kinda... Do you know what I'd mean if I said Mad Libsy? You and insert be shown in here are on a fairly routine patrol when some asshole shows up and immediately decides to seriously injure your dude. Your dude responds to this by becoming a vampire, and after a handful of battles in which he gets his ass handed to him, your husbando has a showdown with that asshole in dramatic location. The final epilogue cuts to 6 months later, where you're holding hands and cherry blossoms fly around and it's very romantic. It's like eating 6 different flavors of Kit Kat.
Presentation.
This game is fucking gorgeous. I mean, just look at it. Everything has this weird paper texture filter that makes you feel like you're inside a living ink painting. The art itself is crisp and distinctive, with stunning backgrounds and brilliant CGs. And just look at these dudes, dude! They're drawn in a very conservative and realistic style, but they've all got these striking neon eyes, and their hair, while mostly black, is tinted with these deep anime-esque colors. Kinda like how the story of Hakuoki takes real-life historical ennui and spices it up with total fucking nonsense. The soundtrack is enchanting and almost reminds me of an old school Capcom RPG. But there's only about a dozen songs, and 4 or 5 get looped so frequently that they get really goddamn annoying. Considering the sheer amount of gameplay time that's spent listening to characters have long, boring conversations, I ended up turning the BGM off after my second route, because for fuck's sakes, make it stop! As for the localization, well, let's talk about Japanese language for a second. See, one of the game's big quirks is that these grand, imposing historical figures are all portrayed as a group of college dude bros, and as such, they talk in a dialect often associated with gangsters and delinquents. And in order to communicate this to an English-speaking audience, they just have them randomly swear a whole fuck ton. Not that there's anything wrong with swearing. I mean, I love to say things like fuck, shit, bitch, and wanktacular. It's just kind of jarring when there's some super intricate assassination plotting going on, and the atmosphere is deadly serious, and then one of the dudes suddenly pops out with, "We're gonna go kill that motherfucker!" Especially since, besides all the fucks and shits, there's really no reason for this game to have gotten an M rating.
Final thoughts.
This ended up being a pretty interesting review to write on my end, since I first played Hakuoki almost 4 years ago. So it's the first one I've written from the viewpoint of looking back at a game I'd already played. See, in 2013, I thought Hakuoki was amazing. But now that I've played tons of other Otome games, it's just kind of okay. When Hakuoki came out in the US in 2012, it was pretty much the only mainstream otoge out there. You could even, find it at GameStop and stuff. And it was pretty much the only dating game for girls you could get on a console. So as a whole, the entire concept was still kind of novel in the West, and beggars couldn't exactly be choosers. Now though, we're living in an Otome explosion. There are over 50 Otome games on Steam alone. And while the Western Otome market is still tiny compared to the Japanese one, it's still kind of hard to recommend Hakuoki because it's really not that special. I mean, it's not a bad game. It's got beautiful art, charming guys, and an okay soundtrack, but really, that's about it. To cover the Shinsengumi's 5-year history in a roughly 3-hour-long route, they pepper the narrative with month or even year-long time skips, which gloss over some of the most dramatic and important shit. Major characters up and dying off screen, key battles that left the Shinsengumi homeless and on the run, all are related via short summaries over static shots of the sky. Instead, we get to experience the majority of scenes centered around dudes debating over assault tactics in secluded rooms. It's a slow burn, and it's hard to connect on an emotional level thanks to all the historical happenings, even despite the existence of the encyclopedia. This game assumes you already know the history of the Shinsengumi, so events that would have been really fun to experience are just treated like footnotes. Imagine watching Titanic, and suddenly we go from Jack and Rose doing it in the car, and then we see the boat sank and Jack died, and then Rose is just chilling on the shore in a blanket. And despite having very different plots, with the way the routes are all structured the same way, boyfriend, douchebag, epic battle, end, if you're someone like me who tends to marathon Otome games over the course of a few days, you will get so goddamn tired of it all. So, do I hate Hakuoki? Hell no! I love Saito, I love Heisuke, and I love the atmosphere the game manages to evoke. But as it stands right now, I can't really recommend it as a must-play. Much like Amnesia, it's a gorgeous game that's surprisingly forgettable. When the Vita re-release comes out, which finally adds roots for the 2 guys I actually wanted to date, plus the cute ninja dude, and 3 entirely new characters? Well, we'll have to see, won't we? Until then, here's Otome-Nia kicking off 2017 with a great big meh. Thanks for watching the episode, guys! If you want to see more Otome-Nia, click the links above. On the left is our New Year's special, Gochi Show for Girls, and on the right is the Season 2 premiere, the star-studded Backstage Pass. And if you really like what we do, consider checking out our Patreon so that we can bring you more reviews.